Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny. I'm a founder of Spotlight and also the leader of Spotlight podcast about diversity, inclusion, and belonging in the workplace, the podcast which you are listening to right now. In Spotlight, we work with topics of what I've just mentioned, and we work through two ways, through two methods: knowledge and action. Knowledge is basically to learn about these topics, to learn what it means in practice, and to learn how to work with them hands on. And for this, we have tutorials on our website, the link to which you have under this YouTube podcast. So you can go there and see which tutorials we have there. And also, this podcast, which is free of charge on our channel, the Spotlight platform, is also a part of a knowledge path. And we also work with consultancy, where we help companies to make this transformation from words to action based on each company's individual needs. So, today we have a very special podcast with a psychologist and a narrative therapist, Luigi Frezza from Italy. He is a leader of this big, I don't know if it's big, but it's a very important movement. It's a new, at least modern movement, how to transform organizational culture to diverse and inclusive with the help of changing narrative. Because we all know that we have some labels in our minds, some narratives in our minds, and on personal levels and on organizational levels, we need to see them, to understand them. And by changing these narratives, this labeling, we are changing, actually transforming ourselves and our organization. So it's a super, super interesting theory, and I'm personally a big fan of it. So I invited Luigi today to share this knowledge with you. So welcome, Luigi. How are you today?
Oh, thank you, Jenny. It's a big honor to me for staying here in this podcast. I'm really, really proud and I'm sincere about this because I've been knowing you since some years up to now. And
Yeah.
you involved me in the Spotlight project, which is something that I uh, really, really agree upon because I think it's a very important topic to address, the topic of diversity and inclusion within organizations, and the topic of trying to change in narratives about the very concepts of diversity and inclusion within organization, which is the starting point to me for talking about these subjects and how to uh, start the changing and transformation in the social context of our organization. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. And it's every organization actually starts with the people working there and with leadership. So actually, for me, your model, your theory was very helpful because somehow I understood how things are working in our minds and how when you start this transformation journey, you need to transform yourself, how you it gives really a world of understanding of self awareness and self understanding for any leader. So this I'm really very excited about to share this in English because you have your own podcast where you in Italian you meet your audience very often and you deconstruct all these definitions and you lead people, but it's unfortunately not available for the broader audience both in Sweden and in other countries. That's why it's great that you found time today and possibility to share in English. And also you mentioned that you are a spotlighter, you are a part of Spotlight expert team where we support companies through consultancy. So it's possible for those of us who watch today and who need more like training adapted and tailored to organization. They are very welcome to contact us for if they want more of your knowledge, hands-on, adapted to their needs. So let us then start with like more about you, Luigi, because psychologist and narrative therapist, what is this and how is it even relevant for organizational development? Because it's not something, if people think about HR or about financial manager, but how do you fit in with your role?
Well, I started get interested in the postmodern psychology movement and the post-structuralist psychology movement, which is, the conceptual framework where we can align the narrative approach and also some similar approaches like the solution focus approach, the collaborative approach, and the strength-based approach. Because of my personal experience of mine, because I, after the degree, I trained according to a quite traditional approach in psychology and therapy. And at the same time, I was supervised and I was under therapy myself. This was one of the values of this training school. The trainees should have had supervised and had a therapist. So doing some therapy path, self-therapy. And at the end of this therapy, this was a colleague of mine, basically. He said, well, finally, I can tell you this, that a thing that I've never told you before. You are type 4. And he was referring to a model which is the Enneagram, which is a model that defines people according 9 types of characters, which are also related to the language of the 7 sins. So you have the envious, the luxurious, whatever. So he said you are type 4. Type 4 should be the envious type. And I said to him, I asked him, why are you saying this to me now? And he answered, oh, this is the typical answer of a type 4. And
Okay.
so at the end of this session, which was quite terrible to me, I was not angry at him. I started to believe what he was saying. Why? Because he was my therapist. So he had a power on me. So I paid him. He was the expert. Even though he was a colleague, he was the expert, especially was the expert I discovered on that typical model, the Enneagram. I have nothing against the Enneagram, okay? I have something against the way you use this type of models.
Yeah.
And so I started to believe that I was actually a type 4. It was a reality to me. And I had problems going on working, because I was saying to myself, how can a type 4 psychologist work with other people? I should modify myself, but according to the Enneagram, you cannot modify yourself. Okay, you can modify, but you change from a type to another. It's just a movement. You cannot go out this cage of the 9 characters. Then there was like a part of me saying, well, there could be something more, because psychology cannot be this, cannot put a label on people. And I remembered that while I was studying psychology, some professors mentioned the postmodern approaches. So I met by chance an article from Kenneth Gergen, which was scientific psychology in a postmodern approach, postmodern framework, something like that. And this author, Kenneth Gergen, which is a very famous, one of the most important postmodern psychologists now living, he described the differences between the traditional modernist psychologists and the so-called postmodern psychology. And it's also mentioned the narrative approach. So I got interested. And one important topic that really struck me was the concept of power dynamics. And I related this concept to my experience, because actually, as I said before, I started to believe that I'm a type 4, actually.
Yeah.
Because my therapist had a power on me, because he was the expert. So he had a power on me. What he was saying was true to me.
Yeah.
So I started to think, to reflect of how what psychology is. Psychology is a system of theories, or sometimes it's a bunch of theories not related to themselves, that is focused on a concept which is the psyche, the mind. But what is mind? It's a construct. It's not a true thing. It's not that I open your head and there's the Jenny's mind saying, "Hi, I'm Jenny's mind." No, it's a construct. So the problem is that psychology tends to consider a construct a real thing. This is a process that in philosophy is called reification, transforming a construct like a real, practical, tangible thing, which is not. If you think about it, psychology also identifies this criteria to define what is a normal mind to a pathological mind, and also invented systems and practices to assess, quantify the range of normality and pathology within a person's mind. So it uses the mind like it were a real thing. If it is a real thing, I'm the bringer of truth. But if mind is not a real thing, it's a construct. My narrative as an expert, I'm just an expert of a theory, which is a narrative related to a construct or a set of construct. So I'm the bringer of a narrative, of a point of view. Who says that my point of view, just because I have a degree, is better than the point of view of the person I'm talking to?
But
so it's a question of reflecting on the role of power I have. Because I have a responsibility because of my role of power. I'm socially invested, being a psychologist, of a role of power towards another person or a group of persons, a couple, a family, an organization, whatever. It's not criticizing and eliminating my role of power, but it's reflecting of my role of power and how I can use my role of power in order to help the person. While the problem is many cases that the psychologist says, I know what is better to you because I am the expert. So it's like I impose my narratives, my criteria, my lens, the way I see the world on you. And I say, the way I see the world is the best way. At least it's better than yours. So you need to be aligned to mine. Or to literature, or to the books, to whatever.
So it's a difference between a role of psychologist and the role of narrative therapist, right? And you are both. So
well, the narrative therapist, I still define myself a psychologist because I have a degree. I am in the national board of psychologists in Italy because we have a board. So legally speaking, identify myself as a psychologist. A psychologist applying the narrative approach, which is reflecting and deconstructing my role of power in the relationship with my patients, my clients, organizations, couples, families, all the people I try to help. And I try to teach my colleagues to this model, which is not so well known in Italy.
So what is narrative therapy? And if you make an elevator pitch for people who are not psychologists, just to simply understand it and how it differs from generally, because we all think of psychologists that you are sitting in a chair, you're answering questions, and psychologist leads you and helps you through these questions. But what is narrative therapy then compared to this label or to this image is in our head?
Well, again, I think that the narrative therapist is aware of his or her role of power within the relationships, and this has a sort of a set of consequences. And so Michael White, who was the founder of the narrative therapy approach, identified a set of practices that could be aligned with this idea that you need to self-reflect on your role of power. And he called them maps of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So to put it more simple, I don't know if you ever heard the word, the sentence, the map is not the territory.
I've not heard it.
The
Can
map
you?
is not the territory, which is being applied, for instance, from in linguistic, in psychology, means, if, for instance, neuro-linguistic approach, neuro-linguistic program, NLP, use this
Mhm.
sentence a lot. They say that if we have a territory which is the real world outside of us, we
Mhm.
don't have an objective experience of the real world. We just have maps,
Mhm.
interpretations of the real world.
Yeah.
It's like in a territory, you have the map of industries, the map of shops, I don't know, the map of schools, whatever. You
Mhm.
cannot have a map that completely identifies everything in the territory.
Mhm.
The map just focus on some elements of the territory. You change the map, you see some elements of territory instead of others. If you apply this idea to our mind, let's say to the way we see the world, we create maps of how the reality works.
Mhm.
But these maps change over time. So narrative is the metaphor that acknowledges the fact that these maps change over time. It's the
Mhm.
fourth dimension, the time. They become a story you have about reality.
Okay.
Change your story, change the way you see reality.
It's very applicable. That's why I love this theory,
Mm.
because it's very applicable to organization and to narrative. If you want to become inclusive and diverse, like what you need to do is to really understand where you are and create a narrative about. Of course, it needs to be based on real actions, but you need to create a narrative and to both to employees and to project it to the world outside you through like branding, personal branding, organizational branding. Is it what is meant then in narrative psychology if we apply now for employers by this is how simple it is, that you create a story about that I am D&I company and I create a narrative which I project inside and outside. This is what you mean
And
by
the narrative approach helps you to explore and analyze the narratives you already have about
Mhm.
yourself, considering the social roles you cover. For instance, the employees or the employer, if we talk about organization. Because the idea is that there are some narratives that are dominant compared to others. Dominant narratives are narratives which is ideas changing over time that are shared by most of people. These dominant narratives have power above other narratives. Okay, it's always a matter of power. So, since these dominant narratives have power, they are considered true.
Mhm.
Okay, so for instance, in psychology, if I believe that there is psychopathology, and most of psychologists say that there is psychopathology, that psychopathology is a real thing, this is a dominant narrative and it becomes a true thing.
Mhm.
Okay, so exploring our narratives means am I aware of the way I describe myself and which are the dominant ideas informing the way I describe myself? For instance, gender. Which
Mhm.
are the dominant narratives in our Western society about gender? About the differences between female and male? How this dominant narrative about female, being a female, impact the way Jenny describes herself?
And you mean then as a leader, it's more like you mean by narrative, like a male leadership style, it's this harsh that you decide
Yeah, for
directly, and
instance.
then female is softer, you listen. You mean these narratives, right?
Yes, for this could be a dominant narrative we have, for instance. How do this dominant narrative impact the way you describe yourself as a leader, the way you describe yourself as an employee, or the way you describe yourself as a minority, which are the dominant narrative about the minority you are a member of, for instance? I don't know. Which are the dominant narratives about the LGBTQ plus
Mm.
culture, informing the way you describe yourself as part of this community? And how do this dominant narrative and the way you describe yourself as part of this community impact the way you approach to work?
Mm.
So
It's
the
in-
narrative approach is asks you questions. It's an inquiry.
it's a very good, because yesterday in a meeting with the team, we actually discussed this about female male narratives, and we all ladies who are working with Spotlight and me, we think that many of us at the beginning of their career adopted a male leadership approach, more like because you are young and you're a woman, and if you're a woman from another country which doesn't belong to the majority culture, you need to somehow, or it was automatically without thinking, that you adopted more harsh, more strict leadership style with like boundaries and like really more, as if we speak in narrative, more male style. And then with age, experience, and when you relaxed and you're really sure about yourself, you went back to your roots and became more like, I don't know, we spoke that we came back to female leadership style, but are we still wandering in the forest of narratives in both cases, or does it make sense somehow? Because this is many women been talking about, women leaders who started, and with the journey they relax and they become more female leaders.
Well, the question should be what we define as male and female in this case, because these are dominant narratives too. And for instance, we come from the Western world, but
Yeah.
can we apply this type of reasoning this type of narrative you're saying to me to, I don't know, an African man or an African woman, I don't know, to a nation? Okay. So the question is that we are made of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Some stories are dominant and define our societies. Some stories are alternatives. We need to see which are the dominant narratives that are good to us, and maybe we should deconstruct these dominant narratives and propose alternative stories. So it
Mm-hmm.
could be that some dominant narratives are useful to me and are not useful to you.
Give an example to just to
Give an
understand what the
example.
people can
I don't
listen.
know. For instance, I'm a male. The dominant narrative of patriarchy
Yeah,
sometimes could be useful to me. Okay, I'm a male,
yeah.
but sometimes there are some elements of the dominant narrative of the patriarchy which are not so good to me. For instance, a male should not cry,
Okay.
but maybe it's useful to you. A female could cry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a matter of what is true, what is not. It's a matter of what is useful and what is not within the organization, within
Mm-hmm.
the family, within the couple, or in a single person's life. So reality, it's a matter of mediating meaning between you and me. And the organizational culture, it's a mediation of meaning between all the actors that create with their narratives the larger narrative of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, people are not aware of which are the dominant ideas informing their narratives.
Okay. So when you say, just to make it super concrete, because your like branding phrase for narrative therapy and for your model with which you work with both individual leaders and companies, it's like the person is not a problem, the problem is the problem. Because
Yeah.
and I think it's very good in this context what you just explained, explain what you mean, because if organization comes to you, what concretely narrative therapy can do for them. And this phrase, I think, is super mirroring very good what you are just explaining in theory. So what
Well, the the idea of personality is a narrative in itself. So the idea that all of us have an internal part, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So look at your inside.
Mm-hmm.
We could go back to Descartes, who says that there's the duality of this language. So there is inside, outside, good versus bad, true versus false. Okay, whatever. Um, so the language we use in describing ourselves in a Western society is based on duality, if you
Mm-hmm.
think about it. And
Yeah.
an important duality when you talk about people is the internal and the external. So there is characters, personality, traits, which is very, if you relate it to the concept of power, it's very useful. If I say that you are a type A personality,
Mm-hmm.
I can control you because I have a set of traits defining what is a type A personality. I can control you. What does control mean in this case? I can foresee your behavior in time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you're not so complex to me anymore. I can foresee what will you will do in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a matter of control, power.
Yes.
So if I say you are the problem, okay,
Yes.
I identify yourself as a problematic person. Okay, and your identity starts to become problematic. If I am
Mm-hmm.
your employers, so I have a power on you and say you're a problematic employee.
Mm-hmm.
I have power on you. I put a label on you, and this impacts in the way I um, talk to you and I'm in relationship with you, but also this impact the way you describe yourself as a person. You are problematic.
Yeah.
So you start behaving in a way which is consistent to the narrative you have of yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
And
If I say to you, you are not the problem, but you are having a problematic behavior, or you are doing problematic things,
mm-hmm.
so a new landscape opens up. Which are
Okay.
these problematic actions I'm doing? For whom they are problematic? In which context are they problematic? When they are less problematic? When they are not problematic at all? With whom are they problematic? With whom are they not problematic? If I say you are a problem, you will be a problem always
Yeah.
in every context, in every situation, because you are the problem. If I say that you do problematic things, is there a moment in your time in your life where you do not doing these problematic things? Is there somebody in your life saying to you that these things are not problematic at all? So it becomes a matter of narratives. For
Mhm.
somebody, these things are problematic. For some others, these things are not problematic.
So let me translate. I'm leader of organization, and how does this? Because it's basically you are changing the mindset of a
Mm.
leader. How you work with your employees, with your team, and if you are like if it's a problem in a team, you don't say you are problem. You are a problem.
No.
What you are doing is problematic. The problem is a problem. How
Yeah,
does it
because
work with?
if I'm an employee and my leader says you're a problem, personally I would ask myself, so why am I working with you if you consider myself a problem?
Okay.
So okay. So if you say I am not a problem, you're not judging my person, but you're judging what I'm doing. I can ask you, okay, when what I'm doing is a problematic. Why is it problematic? Is
Exactly.
there a moment when these things I'm doing are not so problematic? Is there a moment, is there a context where these things I'm doing are really problematic?
I see. I see. So let me just. So it means that we are approaching, if there is a conflict, for example, we are approaching it constructively instead of blaming, putting
Yeah,
the blame. You are a problem. No, you are a
yeah,
bad boss or whatever. We are saying what's going on in this concrete situation.
yeah.
So we are not putting blame on people. We are focusing on a problem, on a
Yes,
situation as a leader of a team and as a team member, and it helps us to solve. Right? This
yes,
is the.
it helps us to solve because I'm focusing. The problem is something else, it's something outside me and you. It's
Yeah.
an entity outside me and you. So the question is, how can we face this problem? So, which are the assets we have? Which are the
Hmm.
skills? Which are the resources we have in order to solve this problem? Instead, if I blame on you, you're the problem. Okay, I am personally problematic. So, how can you change somebody who is personally, intrinsically problematic? You need to send him to therapy, to a very long therapy. Maybe he should change his personality. So, this type of conversation opens up.
Hmm.
I'm not
Yeah.
judging you. And I think you are doing problematic stuff. Why are you doing this? What is it? Why is it important to you to do these things that are problematic according to our organizational culture? To
Hmm.
have space for conversating, and maybe this person can add more values because this person can answer, well, because I think that if I add these elements, they can modify in short term, medium term, long term your organizational culture in this direction.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's clear. It's clear, obviously, the value to make it this problem objective and to solve it. And it's obviously, if you have methods and approaches as a leader to do this, if you are trained by Luigi Frezza in the method, so it changes the whole leadership concept and how much money you will save on these group therapies, which many teams go through in their, this marriage stage, and then it's this romantic, and then it becomes conflict, and there where you pay a lot to different types of therapies when people start to blame each other. But let me now to turn to this narrative to leader, back to leader.
Mm,
Many leaders are like they what I observe in Sweden and those companies we meet, it's very seldom they're like you are a problem. Many leaders think I am a problem as
mm,
a leader, and then many leaders are actually afraid to take this step to call someone. You will never hear like you are stupid or whatever, like a label. It's more like they are labeling themselves like, I want to be this open-minded leader who listens, who leads my team, who, like, you create this image what you want to be. And then many times you tip to the level when you stop. There are no boundaries anymore. Then your team can tell you, no, but sorry, but we will not do it in this way. I'm following this route, my route, and it becomes this. I don't know if it's the right English word, cacophony of in
mm.
the team.
Yeah.
When everyone leads to their own direction, you stop to lead, because in your narrative you want to be D&I leader, diversity and inclusion, and you don't want to be a boss, this narrative boss who with firm hand leads. You want to be a leader, this, like, who listens to everyone, takes into consideration every need. And then you find yourself in a position torn out to 10 different employees, 10 different directions, telling you what to do and not to do, and it's a conflict. It becomes even worse. So what would you advise as psychologist and narrative therapist, most important, to this leader? Because I'm talking many times to myself, because I want to be this leader, inclusive, and I find myself sometimes in this situation. So what would you advise me as your client now if I was sitting in a chair in your cabinet?
Well, it's the same about blaming the other. I'm blaming myself, but it's the
Yeah.
same logic, which means applying using an internalized language. I
Mm-hmm.
should be, which is, you can also call it ontological language. It's on the being. Okay, so
Mm,
I am this way, I should be in another way. So you should change your interiority, your essence, which is a very difficult practice, changing myself, my interiority, my personality. Okay, maybe you can also contact the dominant narrative that you were born this way because the traits are innate, because the characters are innate, whatever. So it becomes, you go toward this narrative path. Okay, if you say, instead, oh, I should be more open minded, I should practice more open mindedness, for
mhm.
instance, it becomes a practice, an activity.
Okay.
Okay. So, one thing is ontological language, I should be. Another thing is the a language based on praxis, practice. I should practice. It's like I have the guitar, so maybe I should practice 1 hour a day guitar.
Okay, I
Okay.
understand.
So there are some, I can do some actions and I can do some other actions. So everybody can do actions. So it's
Mm,
not a matter of who you are, it's a matter of what you do.
okay.
And you can learn things to do. So
Yeah.
it becomes a matter of, okay, I should practice more open mindedness. How can you learn open mindedness? Which
Mhm.
are the activities you can do to improve your open mindedness?
Okay.
Has there ever been in your life a moment where, in your professional career, where you managed to practice more open mindedness? Maybe in another company, maybe when you were younger. Oh, yes,
Mm,
maybe I did this, this, this. If you applied these actions now, what would happen?
okay. So it stops to be about me as a person or a leader, which I associate. It becomes about methodology, methods I use. And I think of situations when I was successful and it didn't tip to the level when it becomes chaos. But when, so I actually, what you say, then I think of that methods, and I, instead of like becoming something I am not, I am practicing methods which have been successful and useful. I am practicing and checking them what works, right?
Yeah,
This is the difference. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
also a matter of applying the lateral thinking, if you want, which is making connections.
uh-huh.
I did in the past things that worked. If I applied these very things now, what would happen? So,
Mm,
how can I connect the past with the present? Maybe I'm good at cooking. So
mm-hmm.
we can ask, okay, can you please identify 3 actions you make that makes you good at cooking? Oh, I don't know. I'm very careful. I pay a lot of attention. I have
Mm-hmm.
patience. Okay. If you paid more attention in talking to your employees, if you applied more patience in talking to your employees, which is taking the actions you do in cooking in the context
I
of
see.
organization, what would happen? Lateral thinking,
Uh-huh.
making connection, systemically thinking.
Super valuable. And also, for me, it becomes automatically less when, even if you tell it now and I'm listening to you, less pressure like on blaming myself. Like if you try different methods, you apply through this lateral thinking from other activities where I'm successful in this, and I apply them. If they're successful, good. If they're not successful, it's like activity which fails, not me, right,
Yeah,
as a leader.
yeah,
So it becomes so much less pressure on the chest, like I'm a bad leader means I'm a
no.
bad person.
It's the
Uh,
fact that I'm doing bad things, and it is the context that says that I'm doing bad things. It's not a
yeah,
general. You know, like they say in marketing, content is king, but context is God.
yeah,
Context. is what says that what is good and what is bad. There's no general good or bad. There's
Yeah.
no general true or false. There's contextual true or false,
Yeah.
contextual good or bad. So
Yeah.
what I'm doing in this organization doesn't work. Maybe in another context would work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It makes perfect sense, and it's really very kind approach to leadership, to yourself, and also to your towards your employees. Like exactly like you don't want to blame anyone. Like you don't say the word stupid, of course, but you like you are a bad worker. You are doing a bad work right now. This is totally different way to put it, and also about you're a bad leader. Okay, you maybe exercised bad leadership today, and
Yeah.
you deconstruct it, and you okay, it makes a perfect it's really good and healthy way of living generally as individual. But okay, then this part is clear, I think. So if we go back you to like this, there are labels and constructs of everything as according to this approach. So what is then if you define diversity and inclusion, because this is like buzzwords everyone define in their own way. So according to narrative therapy, how would you define in the organizational context, what is this diversity and inclusion to help leaders to understand better the terminology?
Well, we should ask ourselves diverse from what?
Yeah.
So what is the criteria that defines what is normal
Ah,
in
okay.
the world of work?
Mm-hmm.
But the criteria defining what is normal in the world of work are also impacted by the criteria defining what is normal in our society, what is a normal
Mm.
behavior.
Yeah.
So this is deconstructing, this is asking what is the story of this idea I have? Where does this idea come from? Who taught me this idea?
Mm.
Okay, so sometimes I experience that in organization they talk about diversity and inclusion, but they are not aware of what is normal. They have never thought about what is normal according to their organizational culture
Mm-hmm.
and how this narrative of normality they have within their organizational culture is related to the biggest dominant narratives about what is normal, what is not in our society. Because
Mm-hmm.
organizations are part of society, they are within our society,
Yeah.
so they're impacted by the dominant narratives of our society. They are made by people who live in our societies. So first of all, if you talk about diversity, what is normality in your organization? How is it impacted by the narratives of normality in our society?
Mm-hmm.
And according to this, what would you consider useful of the narrative you have about normality? Once you've done this, we can talk about diversity and how to make a connection between our idea of normality with the concept of diversity. This,
Mm-hmm.
which is also problematic because maybe the government pushes you to diversity, but maybe the government itself doesn't know what normality is, but
Mm.
it's never thought about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So,
what.
so to me, when we talk about normality and diversity, we still come back to the concept of power: normality, diversity,
Mm-hmm.
minority. So I prefer the concept of connection, connecting to a new culture, to a different culture, so a different point of views. So the question becomes, how can I connect my organizational culture to these diverse ideas coming
Mm-hmm.
from other people? And in this way, you can be, no, I can be an Italian organization and I can accept people from Pakistan. But also, I can be an Italian organization and I accept Luigi Frezza, who is Italian as well, but is the bringer of another culture.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a matter of races, nationalities anymore. It's a matter that all of us have their own culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So how do
bias.
I connect my organizational culture to the culture of all the people who are in touch with my organization.
Hmm. But is it more about then this connection? Is it more about the process of connection, like the because then it's more like towards inclusion, because diversity is more like statistical, like representation. That's why you
Yeah.
don't like it, because it's like normality, and then you are more working towards inclusion and maybe even towards belonging, because connected, it's like Brené Brown's concept, like belonging. I belong, I feel good, I feel heard, I feel seen, I feel. So your connection for me, it's more like towards the feeling and of the employees towards that area. Then it's more like towards
Well,
belonging and
to me,
inclusion.
it's more like accommodating both sides,
Okay.
because to feel a sense of belonging within an organization, I believe that the organization itself should modify some of their values in order to include me,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a question of meeting to a point where we mediate meaning. So I am a bringer of values, ideas, cultures.
Yeah.
Organization is a bringer of values, ideas, culture. How can we make them meet? This is
Yeah.
connection. Otherwise, it becomes that the organization stays on their altar, and I have to ask them to open up and include
Mm-hmm.
me. I need to, uh, without critical thinking, accept all their values, but it can never happen.
No,
No
of course.
employee blindly accepts all the values of an organization. All employees bring novelty
Mm-hmm.
in the organization. So it's a matter that the organization should open up to these novelties and ask itself, okay, how can I make leverage on this novelty, on these new ideas that employees brings me? And the externalizing conversation, which is the thing that we talk about, you're not the problem is the problem, is a way to focus on the skills, the novelties, the ideas, the new values that the
Mm-hmm.
employee can bring on the table, can put on the table.
What you are describing now, it's a very deep processes, deep changes. It's not because it's very easy to go through this token approach, like to, I don't know, hire one Ukrainian, one person who uses wheelchair, or like one person from, I don't know, a woman of 22. So, and tick the box. Another, what you are telling, it's a deep transformational process. And for me, the question is it even possible? I mean, organizations are anyway focused on their core business, what they're selling furniture, what they're or services. But what you are describing, it's a very deep, like, is it even possible to make this transformation, you think?
I don't think it's a matter if it's possible or not. The question is that we just ask questions. So,
Uh-huh.
what is the novelty that this person puts on the table in your organization? It's a
Mhm.
question. Questions open, statements close to me.
Ah, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
because questions helps you reflect.
Hmm.
And then a statement and the answer is something that is related to a shorter time, okay? Then time changes, and so the answers change.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's a matter of asking questions. I don't know what is the impact of these questions. The fact that if I ask these questions, I helps you opening up to a new landscape of reflection.
Yeah.
This is what matters to me, that you can see new possibilities. If you decide to follow those possibilities or not, it's up to you, because to me, you as a person, as a couple, as a family, as a group, as an organization, are free to decide. But you
Hmm.
are free to decide if you see possibilities. If you don't see possibilities, you are not free to decide, because you do over and over the same things because you have no
Yeah.
choices. So it's not a matter if it's possible or not. It's a matter that, do you want to reflect about this? And what would happen if you reflected about this?
Hmm. Yeah.
in short period of time, medium period of time, long period of time.
Hmm. It's brilliant actually, because if you are really honest and honest, if you honestly want to integrate diversity and inclusion DNI as a part of your culture and to change, to alter the culture, you should not start with developing a strategy based on your own feeling or whatever. You start measuring. And for me, this theory and this narrative therapy makes really a lot of sense there at the moment when you've done, for example, your quantitative research surveys or whatever, and then when you need to interpret the results and to place them in the context and to go the next step, to go to your action plan or strategy, then for me, this deep understanding of this data, and also more than that, like of your own bias and what is norm, what is not norm, and for me this would be super valuable than your expertise in this moment to make, as you say, if you want to practice then the new, like, yeah, new reality, new solution or not. For me, to deeply understand the data and to deeply understand your employees and yourself, your own biases, this is super valuable at this stage. And of course, as you say, things change. Diversity and inclusion, it's never like, okay, you've done this work once and then forever you are diverse and inclusive. Situation, context changes, policies changes, you change, your business grows. So this is, this make really perfect sense for me as a leader of organization to, at this moment. Am I understanding, like, is it
Well,
how
if
you
you,
also?
for instance, if we go on with the example of analyzing the quantitative data, if you apply a narrative-based approach, to me, is asking you questions about the results of this data,
Hmm.
asking to yourself, okay, um, how can I modify these things in order to get the data in the way, more in the way I want?
Hmm.
Which are the most useful actions I can make? But also you can ask yourself, how much the dominant narratives I have impact the way I interpret the data.
Uh-huh.
Can I
Yeah.
interpret the data differently? What can I learn from this data? Okay.
Mm.
What do this data say about my organization? Am I satisfied with this data?
Yeah.
So it's deconstructing the way you the way you talk about this data, the way you describe this data, the
Hmm.
way this data have an impact on you as an organization.
Exactly. Yeah, because for me, I've seen it too many times when people collect data, they don't know what to do with that. They do surveys like once per year. Every like all organizations do some kind of inclusion survey, and HR do this pulse survey, and then you collect the data. First of all, where you collected it, who answered, why they answered, why they didn't answer, and how you interpret the results. Even when organizations do that, it's already great, because at least they try to base what they on data and not on a feeling that now I want to be an inclusive leader, let's do it,
Yeah.
let's do this training or whatever. But so it would be very good, like, yeah, to really understand this data. And that's why there is a great book which is called Inclusalytics. It's about actually helping the leaders to collect data in order to make any kind of step, both first, second, and tenth. And actually, they mentioned that you need to have a psychologist and people who can help you to deconstruct and understand the data. And also there is methods like additional focus groups or whatever you can do to collect more info to understand data, because numbers never show
Well,
and
a useful question to me would be, how do this data impact the way you see your organization?
yeah, yeah,
Because in
absolutely.
this way you can reflect of which are the expectations you have about your organization, how do these expectations relate to the data,
Uh-huh.
and what you can do in future in order to uh, give the organization the direction you want.
Yeah. So basically, narrative psychology helps us both deconstruct and understand the data, the current labels, the current gaps, and like narratives we have, basically the dominant narratives and why we do it, and also helps us to objectively put a goal, which means a narrative we want to create instead, choose, because we talked earlier that we it's not that people are like totally without good experiences. We have done good things and have good experience. We apply those methods to achieve this new narrative, and basically this is how in practice we change the narrative. But you really need to understand also narrative psychology. Narrative therapy helps you to, crucial to understand what you're doing and why, and which
Yeah.
narrative you want, and
Yeah.
make this bridge. Yeah, it's brilliant. I don't understand why it's not more used than it is actually in the organizational development, narrative therapy.
To me, it's a question of power. It's easier to blame myself or blame the others
Hmm.
because, if you say yourself, I'm bad, you identify, you give a label to yourself. So you're easier to understand to yourself because there's a label.
Yeah.
So you can foresee your behavior in the future, or you can foresee the behavior of the other people in the future. The narrative, if you apply the idea of narratives change over time. So
Yeah.
you cannot control people because
Mm.
people are ever changing. In
Yeah.
fact, which means that you need to deconstruct your role of power. This is what you asked me earlier. Can these changes ever be real in an
Mm.
organization? I don't know. What I know that I ask questions. I don't know
Mm.
the effect of these questions, but I know that asking questions, I open up new possibilities, and I
Mm.
don't know what is the content of this possibility, but I give you the mindset to see other possibility. The
Mhm.
name you give to this possibility is up to you.
Yeah.
My duty, cioè, my work is done once I give you the mindset to see possibility.
Mm. It's so brilliant in its simplicity, this approach. I really love it. So, because I had many more questions to you about practical tips for employers, but I think you've answered already all those questions in in practice, how to, like, what is narrative therapy and how it can help a leader. And of course, the best way is to invite the expert, to invite the professional in asking questions in order to objectively help you to understand yourself, your context, and also to create this new narrative, which narrative you want to create. And then the way here is, yeah, it can be different. So it's of course best to invite to invite the expert, but already understanding of this and making step out of yourself, like blaming you as a leader, blaming your employee, it's already like a great insight to me, which I take with me today, which, as I'm really a big fan of this approach, and I'm thinking like this since I met you, Luigi, and since we've been working for a couple of years together, and I'm a big follower of it. So for me, it just was today another another like repetition of what I already know and really appreciate in my work. But I hope that those of you who are watching us and listening to us today, it's if it's new for you, I hope that you really like these insights and this knowledge, and you take them with you today to your workplaces. But is it something, Luigi, which you think we've forgotten to mention, which is important for employers when it comes to narrative therapy and organizational change and personal development, or something you want to send with today?
I think that we uh, we should consider that mm, working according to a narrative approach, also means seeing the other part of the story of yourself, which is describing in a very deep way what are the things you're good at, what you can do. We
Mhm.
are used, we are taught in our Western society to focus on problems,
Mhm.
what is not working, because the dominant narrative is the problem solving. That is, if I know the problem, I can control the problem. But to me, sometimes if I know the problem, I'm very expert of the problem, but not expert on which are my skills that I can apply to solve the problems.
Mhm.
And in my experience, it become the most difficult part of working in organization is talking about what you can do,
Mhm.
because I'm very expert in what I cannot do, in
Yeah.
what I'm wrong at. But if I ask to Jenny, can you please tell me three things you believe you're not good at? And Jenny would say me not three things, 30 things probably.
Yeah.
But if
Easily.
I ask, yeah, but if I ask to Jenny, can you tell me three things you think you are good at? Jenny will
Mm.
have to think about it. Okay, maybe the
Yeah.
first one, then the second one, I don't know. The third one, oh man, I'm not so sure about it. So this is the other side of the narrative.
Yeah. True.
And this is the most difficult, but this is a way to see that you as a person are always more than what you tell about yourself and the one all the others tell about yourself. There's
Mhm.
always something more. So the organization is always something more than all the people involved in the organization say about the organization
Mhm.
itself.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. True. And I mean, this to create the right narrative now, when people are attracted to workplaces, not only for money, I would say, but for exactly for like for narratives, for they want to identify with something. So what you want to express about yourself, and it's so actually comforting and nice to realize that you can, as employer, as a founder or of the business, what do you want to project, what narrative you want to be out there. And it's very comforting feeling that you actually can control it, you can create it, and not only like, yeah, putting things on social media which don't mean anything like advertisement, but by actually making Sarah work inside and to like to changing the culture. So it's a
Yeah.
really true change, so it's a true narrative you are building.
So what is the sign you want to leave to the world?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is also, as I always tell you about it, which also the reflection you had in creating Spotlight, which is the sign that I as
Yes.
Jenny want to leave on the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a clear narrative there, which and I will not now speak cliches, making world a better place, but there is, yeah, it's definitely a mission, a vision, and it's very nice to be able to project this mission, to show it clearly, and those who want to be on that mission together are very welcome. But then without, if you cannot define it, if you cannot show to the world what you want, how do you expect the world to understand and be a part of it? It's like, if you can't, the world cannot help you, people cannot help you. So it's important to yeah, to create. I'm sorry, I'm sick, so I'm a bit yeah, blowing my nose from time to time, but it's important, yeah, to create a narrative which reflects your real values and you project it. So Luigi, I am really grateful for today. As always, it's so interesting to talk to you, and I have thousand more questions. So I hope that we will meet again in our podcast, and because it's a sheer pleasure to listen to you, because you become a little bit wiser every time after every discussion, really. So I've learned a lot through these years and even today, this hour. So thank you very much for
Thanks to
sharing
you.
your knowledge. And for our listeners and audience and those who watch and listen, please share this podcast in your networks to your colleagues, because it's really interesting and very unique knowledge. Because, as I said, Luigi has his own podcast in Italian, but this is something unique in English. And it's not, unfortunately, so much about narrative therapy and in business world, and it should be. So it's something super unique, which many people could find helpful and beneficial for personal growth and for organizational growth. So please share, and please join our podcast also on YouTube Spotlight platform, so you will not miss any of this important spotlight knowledge and insights like today from Luigi for becoming a better leader and better organization, and making, as Luigi, you said, positive impact on this world. So I wish you, Luigi, a great day, sunny day in Italy. It's warm
Thank
there,
you.
so enjoy the
Yeah,
sun.
yeah. Thank you. It's been an honor. Really, it's been an honor.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being together with us. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.